So today we are talking about the physical and the chemical changes. Okay? So there are two types of changes that may occur to matter. So in order to know that, the following examples show these two types of changes. What are these examples? If you cut a paper into pieces, its shape only changes, just the shape. So we can say that it's a physical change, something that happened to the appearance of the paper. It was in one piece, then it became in many pieces. If you burn a paper, its shape and the structure change. It turns to something black. So what happens? So we call that, or we can say that it's a chemical change. So now we are going to study physical change and chemical change of matter by showing some examples on each type of them. We'll start by the physical change of the matter. So what is the physical change? Physical change, it's a change in the appearance or the shape of matter without any change in its structure or the properties of the matter itself. What are examples of that? One, the change of water from one state to another. The ice cycle, from ice in the fridge to water that we drink. Two, melting of any solid matter such as wax, chocolate and ice cream. They are just melt. When they were in the icy state, they became in a liquid state. Three, grinding of sugar or chalk into powder. It's obvious. Four, dissolving or the dissolution of table salt or sugar in water. They doesn't disappear, or they are not vanished, they are just disappearing in the water, but they are there. 5. Malleability or the ductility of elements to form sheets or wires. Bending of elements. 6. Cutting paper into small pieces and paper recycling, and of course we mentioned that earlier. So let's make an activity, and let's call this activity 1, and the purpose of this activity to show that ice cycle is a physical change. What are the steps? First of all, put a beaker full of ice over a flame like shown in the figure. What will happen? The ice melts and it changes into water. Then we continue heating, we don't stop, we continue heating the previous beaker, so we are now heating the water. What will happen? Water boils, producing water vapor. Then, for the third stage, we put a cold glass sheet over the beaker while the water is being heated. What will happen? Water vapor condenses and it changes into water drops again. And you can see in the picture there is a cold glass sheet, then water vapor, the droplets are collecting on that cold glass. Then in another beaker they are being slipped there. 4. Put the assembled water in the freezer for a period of time. Then what will happen? The water changes into ice. This is an obvious, everyone does this at their home. So the conclusion, the change of water from one state to another, which is melting, evaporation, condensation and freezing, is a physical change, as the shape of water changes but its structure does not change. The structure remains the same. Let's do another activity. Activity 2, this time to show that melting of wax, which is a candle, is a physical change. So, what are the steps? Just one step. Fix a burning candle on a plate. What will happen? The wax melts, and what happens else? It changes into liquid drops. Then this liquid solidifies again. This means it becomes solid again. So, what's the conclusion of doing that? Melting of wax is physical change, as the appearance or the shape of the wax changes, just the shape, but its structure does not change. It doesn't turn to something else, it still wax. To activity 3, and this activity to show that grinding of sugar is a physical change. And the steps are just 2 steps this time. One, take a sugar cube and taste its flavor. We just taste it, and of course it's gonna be tasty with sugar. Then grind the sugar cube by a mortar, and I think the figure of the mortar or the shape of the mortar is here in the picture. Then taste it again. What will happen? The observation: the sweet taste of sugar cube doesn't change after grinding, but its shape changes into fine powder. So what does this mean, or the conclusion? Grinding of sugar is a physical change as the appearance or the shape of sugar changes, but its structure, the properties, does not change and remains the same. So we can say, if we are asked for a give reason why a sugar cube keeps its sweety taste after grinding it, although we can see it. Because grinding of sugar is a physical change, so its shape changes but its structure does not change. Now to a fourth activity, and this activity to show that dissolution or the dissolving of table salt in water is a physical change. And what shall we do? Or the steps? First of all, taste a spoon of table salt. The observation: the table salt has a salty taste. This is something obvious. Then add the table salt to a glass beaker. We'll take this and put it in a glass beaker containing water and stir it with a glass rod until it dissolves. What happened? The shape of table salt changes or disappears. Okay, for number 3, put the beaker on a flame until the water evaporates. What will happen? Okay, and this step also is accompanied by the fourth step, which is we have to move the beaker away from the flame. Then we test the remaining substance. The remaining substance in the beaker is table salt. So simply we dissolved the table salt in water, then we boiled water, so all the water disappeared, and what's left in the end? The same table salt that we started with. So what is the conclusion of that? The dissolving of table salt or sugar in water is a physical change, as the shape of table salt or the sugar in our case changes, but its structure does not change. So if you're asked for a give reason why dissolving of table salt in water is a physical change, because it causes a change in the shape of table salt, but its structure does not change. Now we move to the chemical change of matter. What's meant by chemical change? It's a change in the shape and the structure of matter, producing a new substance or new substance with different properties. So they are different from the substance that we start with. What are these kind of examples of that? Burning or combustion of any matter, such as wood, sugar, paper, fuel, candle, etc. When you burn them themselves, they change to something different. Another example, which is number 2, the production of yogurt from milk. It's another substance. You got number 3, rusting of iron. It was shiny and metal, then has a rust. It turns to dark brown, something like that. 4, digestion of food. 5, adding sodium bicarbonate to vinegar. It will change to something else and taste and the matter and the material itself. 6, the addition of yeast to pastry doughs. Okay, all this kind of bread that we take, it has something to do with the yeast. 7, rot and fermentation of fruits. Okay, what happens? The taste changes and the structure of the fruit itself changes. Now to do an activity to show, this is the 5th activity in the lesson or the lecture, and this is to show that burning of sugar is a chemical change. Simply we heat an amount of sugar in a crucible, then taste it after cooling, like shown in the figure. What will happen? The sugar changes into a brown substance that loses its sweet taste by heating. And what else? The brown substance cannot be returned back. We cannot get that brown substance again into metal. No. To the sweet white sugar after cooling, this will never happen. Okay? Because it changed. And why does this happen? And this is due to the conclusion that burning of sugar is a chemical change, as the shape and the structure of sugar change by heating. Now, activity 6 is to show that rusting of iron is a chemical change. How could this happen? Let's do this together. First of all, we expose a piece of cleaning iron to wet air. We just put it to air that's humid. It's of course water plus air for a period of time. Then examine it by a magnifying glass. If we get a magnifying glass, we will see something amazing. What's happened? Formation of brittle brown layer, which is rust on the iron wire. So what's the conclusion of that? Rusting of iron is a chemical change as the shape and the structure of the cleaning iron wire changes when it's exposed to wet air. It changes completely. Now to do another activity, activity 7, to show that adding sodium bicarbonate to vinegar is a chemical change. And in order to do that, the steps, we have just 2 steps. Add an amount of sodium bicarbonate, which is baking soda, to a bottle containing small amount of vinegar. Then put a balloon at the opening of the bottle quickly. What will happen? Like shown in this picture. The observation that the balloon is inflated due to the production of carbon dioxide gas. And then the conclusion, adding sodium bicarbonate to vinegar is a chemical change as their shape and structure change, producing a new substance with new properties. And if we are asked for a give reason, why burning of food is a chemical change? Because burning of food causes a change where in its shape and structure, producing a new substance with new properties. And if we're asked for a give reason, the formation of a layer rust on the surface of wet iron wire, why does this happen? Due to the chemical change that's produced from the reaction between iron and both water and oxygen. And here we have to note something. There are some notes. The first one is melting of candle is a physical change, while burning of candle is a chemical change. It's very important to differentiate between the two processes. Cutting a piece of paper into small pieces is a physical change, while burning this piece of paper itself is a chemical change. Rusting of iron is formed due to the reaction between the iron and both the oxygen and water. Together, the oxygen and water on one side, they react with the iron on another side. And this is our extra bit of information, which is read and learn. Melting of iron is a physical change. Why? Because as its structure does not change, the structure does not change, so it remains the same, so it's a physical change. The addition of some elements as carbon and manganese to molten iron changes its properties, such as the iron becomes more harder and resists rust and corrosion, forming an iron alloy. Okay? So we add something to the iron to make it stronger and resist the rust. There is another alloy made of copper and gold. So the gold, in order to be more shiny, we put copper to it with a small percentage. Now for a very little quiz, and of course the quiz is answered, which is this question. Complete the following table by writing the type of change that takes place to substances, then mention the reason. Change that happens to the substance. What happens? Breaking of chalk. This type of change is physical change. The reason? Change in shape only. And if it's chemical, it will be change in the shape and structure. So burning of food, which is number 2, is chemical because there is a change in the structure and shape. 3, copper malleability into wires. So copper malleability into wires, this is physical change. And why? Because there is a change in the shape only. 4, melting of iron is of course physical change and due to the change in shape only. 5, dissolving of sugar in water is physical change and of course because change in the shape only. Cutting paper into small pieces, it's exactly like the last one, physical change and the change in the shape only. Rusting of iron, which is number 7, it's a chemical change. Why? Because there is a change in the shape and the structure, not just the shape and structure. And here for a very little review for what we've studied in this lecture, this is a brief. There are 2 types of changes that may occur to matter, which are the physical change, chemical change. And for the comparison between the physical change and the chemical change, in order to do this table, we have to get the points of comparison. Then we start comparing for the physical change and chemical change. What are the main points of comparison? One, the change in the appearance of a substance. For physical change, it takes place, and for the chemical change, it takes place also. Number two, the change in the structure of substance. For the physical change, it does not take place, but for the chemical change, it takes place and it happens. Examples for both changes. For the physical change, we have melting of ice, melting of wax, bending of metals, dissolving of sugar or table salt in water. And for the chemical change, we have burning of sugar, burning of candle, rusting of iron, burning of fuel. Another point is change of water from one state to another, melting, evaporation, condensation, and freezing is considered as a physical change. Okay? Just the shape changes. Melting of a candle is a physical change, while burning of a candle is a chemical change. Rusting of iron is formed due to the reaction between iron and both oxygen and water. And thank you.